Welcome to EPG Pathshala. Today we are going to discuss the module Epistemology in Aristotle. This module is written by John Russin of University of Guelph, and this module is part of Epistemology 1. I am Raghuram Raju from University of Hyderabad. One way to begin the discussion of this module is to set a brief background, and that is, we have seen while discussing Plato's epistemology that there is a significant shift from pre-Socratic to the Socratic. Namely, the pre-Socratics have presented their philosophies in a form of aphorisms, and Socrates has initiated an important way of discussing philosophy in the form of dialogues, in the form of debates. And then we have seen how, for instance, Plato has converted these lively dialogues and wrote them up and made them quasi-doctrine. So that's a major shift. So now we find, for instance, with Socrates, knowledge becomes accessible, philosophy is available for people, human beings, to deal with it. Okay, it is not just contemplating on the universal principles of this existence, but discuss about it, which is the hallmark of Socratic method. That's the important point. So now you see increasingly the move is towards making the activity of philosophizing towards the human beings. Now that's a very important move that we need to keep in mind. But then there are two important aspects in Socrates, and they are that knowledge is nothing but recollection of all what we already know. There is nothing that you add in the activity of knowledge learning, knowledge production. And two, the empirical world that you see is a copy of the transcendental form, the universal concepts which do not change, whereas empirical reality changes. So these are the two important aspects surround the Socratic philosophy. Now you find something interestingly problematic with these kinds of philosophizing in Socrates, and that comes in the form of in the following form. If knowledge is mere recollection, then isn't it something where human intervention is reduced considerably? That's one point that can be problematized further. And the second point is, if the empirical world is a carbon copy or a copy of the transcendental world, which is permanent, immutable, beyond change and things like that, then what will be my attitude toward this world? If this world is changing, do I take this world seriously? Because this is not the world which is real. This is not the world which is ultimate. This is a real which is merely a copy. So that has implications to my moral conduct. Okay? If this world is real, then I have to take this world seriously. Do I or should I take this world seriously if the world is not real and mere a copy of something transcendental? In other words, let me just illustrate this point with an example. If I am watching or I am handling Picasso's original painting, what would be my attitude? Suppose if I am handling or watching a copy of Picasso's painting, then what will be my attitude? In the first case, my attitude is serious and I have to be very careful because you can't undo things. But while handling a copy of Picasso's painting, I might not show that seriousness which is demanding when I'm doing and when I'm handling Picasso's original painting. So if you use this example, you will understand that my attitude towards the world that is permanent will be different from my attitude towards the world which is not so permanent, which is a copy. So I think this is the biggest problem that seems to be haunting the post-Platonic philosophers, and Aristotle, being the direct student of Plato, faces it head on. Okay, so let's see how he faces this problem. This is the background that I set for you, and let's see how he takes the discussion further. Now, the point that we need to settle before we enter into Aristotle's epistemology is Aristotle's writings on metaphysics, politics, poetics, ethics, and so many other topics are not available in a particular place. They are all available in the form of lectures, several notes, and notes that are recorded by his students. So we need to synthesize Aristotle's discussion of the understanding of things like sensation, learning, and mind to arrive at his theory of knowledge. So it is not that it's a systematic theory of knowledge of Aristotle is available to us and then we can revisit it. That's not the case. We need to assemble, we need to synthesize, we need to systematize what is available all over the place, and sometimes not written by Aristotle but spoken by him and recorded by his pupils. But broadly speaking, one of the hallmarks of Aristotelian approach in general and his epistemology in particular is this daring attempt to come up with a naturalistic account of the universe or the world. And that naturalistic account is both holistic and empiricistic. This is a challenge. It is both holistic and empiricist. Let us look at how he deals with this task, this project, in a very, very adventurous, path-breaking, in a foundational way. He sets, in fact, the thematic for a large number of discussions that takes place later. In fact, many things that are very, very, in a subtle and in a simple way that are available in Aristotle comes to be used in a substantial way, though in bits and pieces, by the continental philosophers later when they react to the Cartesian representative theory of knowledge. We'll come to it in other modules and maybe briefly in this module itself if there is a time. So let us look at Aristotelian naturalism. According to Aristotle, all human beings by nature have this immanent tendency towards knowing. Now you know from this that it is not that knowing is out of choice. Knowing is some natural quality that is given to you. You can't but know. So the question is that can I make a choice whether to know or not? Aristotle would not take it favorably. He would say that it is not possible for you not to know. So you have to know. But there is a difference, and we will look at how that difference unfolds in different ways. So he sees knowledge within the natural capacities of organisms. Organisms, like they sense and come in contact with the other world, they also know. And knowledge is not something which is a contingent aspect of human existence. It is a constitutive aspect of human existence. This is something which is very, very important while looking at Aristotle's theory of knowledge. So for him, knowing is inbuilt in human being. It is not one attribute but a constitutive aspect of human being. In his book on the soul, he says that human beings, like animals and plants, but unlike inorganic things engage in self-nutrition, growth and reproduction. So like plants and animals, human beings also, work for self-nutrition. They also grow, they also reproduced. Further, like animals, but unlike plants, human beings have the sensory awareness and move on their own. Okay, unlike plants and other inorganic, metals and things like that, but like animals, they move and they have a sensory awareness. But he says this he continues in his book on politics, where he says that both animals and human beings have something in common, that both of them produce sounds. But what distinguishes human being from other animals is that human beings have the capacity to speak. They speak, whereas animals don't. That's the difference. So what is important to remember is, you have already started seeing that unlike Plato or Socrates, who are not interested in describing various aspects of the empirical world, here is a person, a philosopher par excellence, who embarks on this project of classifying. He is a master classifier, classifying various gradations of what is there in reality. Inorganic, then the plants, then animals and human beings. What is common to them and what is different amongst themselves or between themselves is already covered by him. This is the important aspects of his naturalism. Unlike any other natural beings, human beings have the capacity to grasp reality intellectually. This is a point that he makes. It is this capacity to grasp things intellectually that distinguishes human beings from animals. In addition to this capacity to grasp reality intellectually, human beings, as I pointed out just now, have the capacity to communicate that understanding. So it is not only that I understand the reality intellectually, but I also communicate that understanding to others through meaningful speech. Now look at, already it looks very commonsensical, but then you know that there is a lot of fundamental ground that he is clearing, so that things becomes clear about this external world which is in front of us, this empirical world which is important in front of us. So human beings have this capacity to grasp things intellectually, and they also have the capacity to communicate what they grasped through meaningful speech. They also have a further capacity, in addition or over and above or extension of this communicative capacity, they have a capacity to have logos. He says that they are the people who can give a logical account of what they understand, what they speak, what they communicate to others. Aristotle describes the experiential process involved in coming to understand something as epagogue, which is generally translated as induction, but it is more than induction. It is something like learning. So learning is something which is important for Aristotle. Please remember that knowledge acquisition is natural, but that doesn't mean that you just keep, it will come to you, everything will come to you just like that. No. In addition to that inbuilt capacity, that constitutive feature that human beings have, they can contribute, they can work hard to learn more. The learning more is individual specific. Learning is common to all human beings. If you are a human being, you are a learning being. But for Aristotle, the range of learning, the levels of learning, the extents of learning, the facets of learning differ from maybe individual to individual. So unlike Plato, who mistrusts senses, Aristotle concedes that senses give us access to things. You get to know about the external world through senses. And once you start coming in contact with the external world through senses, then there is a practical engagement with those things. I don't just, have a sensory experience of the table. I also have, along with the sensory experience, the practical engagement with this table which I'm using it now. So it is not that I sense a table and then have a practical engagement. Both sensing and practical engagement are imbricated, so to say. And once I know what is the importance of this table and how to use it, and which is dictated by my practical engagement, then I get used to this table. So I don't come to this room, the way in which I came to this room for the first time. When I came to this room and started using this table for the first time, at that time the engagement is new. I started looking at the table and used it in a particular way. But gradually, over a period of time, when I keep presenting these modules to the camera, I get used to these objects. Now, that is something that is very important. So habit formation is what comes to the later stage, and that is a very crucial thing for Aristotle. So he says that we develop experience with those things. Now, when I become habitual to these objects, then I start looking at them differently. I will start looking at not only what it is meant for in the first instance, but I can see that it can be used for other things. Not only to deliver this lecture, I could use it for other purposes. I can use it at different times. I can work with it in different things. So all these things, the different facets of this table come to me, bring both novelty and also repetition. To use the word, the phrase that became very popular subsequently, I'll not get into it right now here. And then once I get to know various facets of this table through the senses and through the practical engagement and also through the habitual, it becomes a habit, then I start looking at grasping their principles explicitly to understand them. Then I look at what is common to table, what is its essential qualities, what are its contingent qualities. This is quite different from Socratic stand that knowledge is mere recollection. That's the important point that we have to keep in mind. So please remember that there is something that he starts which is very foundational. There is also something that he differs which is significant. So we have to keep these two axes in mind while dealing with this indomitable foundational philosopher from Greek. Let us look at some details about this senses. See, for instance, Aristotle says that we have perception. We perceive objects. Now, the senses or perception have different dimensions. The senses have vision, gives us color. Okay, hearing gives us sound. Touch gives us texture, and so on. But when we perceive an object, we also recognize that white color and hard texture belong to the same thing. We don't perceive whiteness and hardness separately. They are simultaneously perceived. So there's something very important. Please keep this in mind, because he's going to arrive at something through this argument. So this indicates, what indicates that when I perceive a white table, it is not that I perceive whiteness and then the texture. Both of them are perceived together. This indicates that individual senses do not operate independent of each other. It is not that eye operates in one way and then adds to what is operated by the ear. No, they are all, imbricated. They're all, they all work in collusion with each other, in cooperation with each other. So that is the reason why he says that each one of our senses have something which is what he calls as common power of sensing. They all belong to a particular platform that is common, and that specializes in different things. Okay, so it is not that there are different senses and they all give us bits and pieces and then I assemble together. This is a position that the later empiricists took. No, he says that that is not the way in which senses operate. Senses operate from a common platform, and then they do different kinds of jobs, and that gets us into this thing. Now look at something very complex that he sees in an ordinary life, which eluded the attention of somebody like Plato before him, his teacher. Okay, So it is an organism as a whole that senses through each of the individual powers of sensing. For Aristotle, perception is an organic matter of an animal apprehension of a total meaningful form. So when I sense something, I don't sense them in different ways. Not seeing differently and texturing, touching differently. No, they're all together. So being experienced for him means we in our daily gradual life gradually become familiar with things, the point that I mentioned about this table. We develop feel for them, we come to deal with them. We also get a desired behavior from them. Like, I don't want this table to perform in this way. So I change the table to suit to my requirement. So I don't say that, no, the table is given to me, no, I have to do it. No, I can modify the table and suit to my requirement. We also care for them. This is something which is very, very important, that we also care for the objects that we deal with. Now, this is one of the important aspects, the care ethics of 20th century people, when the new discipline called care ethics came, that they started revisiting Aristotle, because caring for objects, you don't find this again in Aristotle, though I don't think that I am trying to really look down on Plato, but please remember that you don't find this in Plato. So our experience is not a detached observation, but a practical engagement. Look at this thing. This is what Descartes later but disengages. He wants to look at the experience and knowledge as a detached observation, or something what is called as by Thomas Nagel as a view from nowhere. No, Aristotle, retrospectively speaking, would say that no. He would say that it is not a detached observation, but it is a practical engagement. This engagement is not just practical instrumental, it is a meaningful, and it reveals the nature of things. Like in my practical engagement with reality, I come to know the nature of the reality. Now so in this context, we can say that Aristotle's understanding can be called as holistic empiricism. It is empiricistic, but not reduced to mere empirical things. Now let us briefly look at the four causes for which Aristotle became very, very famous, and they are the four causes are: one is the material cause. The material cause is the distinctive bodily arrangement. Let us look at, there is a wood. The wood is the material. The wood is the material. And now the wood when a carpenter wants to make a chair out of the wood, there's something that is very important that happens. The carpenter does not make a chair out of wood just like that. So it is not that there is wood and there is a karta called a carpenter who makes a chair. No. Aristotle insists that there is an idea of, or the form called chair, which makes carpenter to make the chair. So there is what is called as a formal cause. The formal cause is that when carpenter begins to make a chair, he has an idea of the chair. Without that idea of a chair, he can't make the chair. So after material cause, what is required in a sequential order is the form. Okay? And it is according to that form, you start making the chair. Not the other way around, as it is thought by somebody like Hobbes later. There is an efficient cause, which is carpenter. Okay? So you have a material, the wood, and then there is an idea of a chair, and it is a carpenter who takes the material and makes a chair according to the idea of the chair. So he is the material cause. And then there is a final cause. It is not just chair is made and kept, the work is over. There is a purpose for making the chair. Chair has a purpose, and that purpose is what he calls as a final cause. This is a cause, and this is one of the important aspects, which is what is called as a teleological aspect in Aristotle, which came to be accessed by several people subsequently, particularly somebody like Alistair MacIntyre in his book on the after virtue. So there are these three important causes which are very important while in Aristotle. Now you see the kind of descriptive classificatory mind that is unfolding in the form of Aristotle. That's very fascinating about this person. He makes you feel that he is a next door person. He makes you feel as if that, he is trying to classify things that you already know. Okay, so for Aristotle, the reality of natural thing is not reducible to its immediate existing state. So it's not that, they're all parts and then I can dismantle them and then put it because please remember that Aristotle is a person who said whole is prior to parts. Okay, that whole is important, and first there is a whole and then the parts come. Parts are dependent on the whole. So he doesn't say that the reality of natural things is not reducible to its immediately existing state. On the contrary, the immediate existing state of things is only seen for what it is when it is seen in the context of its defining form. Its developmental goal, that is telos, in material, efficient and final causes are most important thing. So the interesting aspect of Aristotle's philosophy is factoring simultaneously both the inherently empirical and the essentially holistic nature of things and reality. The carpenter and the wood is the empirical aspect, the idea and the purpose or the formal aspects. Knowledge for Aristotle begins from the immediately present actuality but doesn't stop there. It will not end there. But it will end in apprehension of the whole understood as organized by a formal or final cause. So Aristotle's method is the one which moves from received views to defining principles of that reality. So first I know the reality as it is through my senses, but I don't stop there. I can transcend that and lay bare the defining principles of what I see, what is given to me by my senses. So mind for Aristotle is not merely a property of an individual person, because individuals operate with a necessary perspective. So there's nothing, it is not just individuals. The individuals are there in relation to the other. Moreover, bodily senses are vulnerable to the qualities they apprehend. So for instance, he says that the hearing can be destroyed by loud sound. The vision can be destroyed by the bright light. Touch can be too hot a temperature. But that doesn't mean that all those things will vanish. So that's why he doesn't reduce senses just to bodily things. So there is something over and above that which operates, and that is the point that he highlights. So bodily senses operate with necessarily finite perspective. They have a finite perspective, but they are the fundamental insofar as you begin with them. However, the very nature of mind is that it apprehends things absolutely, universally and infinitely. These are the things that are not associated with bodily senses. It is mind who has the capacity to think absolutely, to think universally and to think infinitely. So the power of mind exceeds any of the powers of our bodily organism. So mind cannot be property of our natural organism, but must be self-defined, independent of the body. This is where many empiricists found problem with Aristotle. But please remember that this is the necessary requirement. Otherwise, it should have had the problems that infected modern philosophy later, where the noumena, phenomenon, that kind of a distinction has come to become very, very big problematic. So he says that senses are finite, but mind is not finite. Mind goes beyond and sometimes independent of the senses. So for Aristotle, mind is not our own, but is a power to which we have access. That's the point where many empiricists found objection with Aristotle. According to Aristotle, human beings have something in common with animals. Okay, but there is a stage which is beyond animal existence that human beings can have access, and that is that human being can cultivate good habits, and then through the cultivation of good habits he can do two things. One, he can actualize his potentialities, and second thing is he can release his energies and then accomplish greater heights. These are the two things, that is realizing the potentialities and making them into actualities, releasing the energies and then accomplishing greater tasks. or something that distinguishes human beings from other animals. From the development of habit of an emotional response that are intelligibly sensitive to the demands of the behavioral situation, we can, there is this facility with human beings. Aristotle refers to the moral virtues and virtues of character in this context. In fact, this is the core of Aristotle's morality. Aristotle's morality rests on the possibility that from animal existence, human being can transcend and accomplish, and that forms the raw material, the foundation for his ethics and human beings' ethical behavior. Aristotle refers to cultivating our logos as such as intellectual virtue. It is an intellectual virtue or excellence of thought. Okay. Though knowing is something that is natural to us, there is an ability to know well. And we can also cultivate that ability so that progress is possible and it is almost individual, dependent. It is only individuals or human beings who has the capacity to transcend, to convert, potentialities into actualities, to release the resources and then accomplish greater thoughts. The logos for Aristotle consist in this form of releasing energies or converting potentialities into actualities. The domains that are very, very important are crafts. It is in craft that you release your energies and also convert what you have in mind into an object of your creativity or even a duplication. Okay, so creativity associated with crafts, science, wisdom, prudence, virtues, excellence of logos. All these things can be accomplished because human being has this inbuilt capacity to come in contact with the world, and as I said, that knowledge is something natural to human being. But then that's not just there. You can know better, you can develop better. All these things are possible. Knowing in all its forms is not merely a recollection of an already existing power. This is the major difference Aristotle has with Plato. Instead, noting is a matter of skillful practice. It requires a lot of effort. So, and you will know the importance of this effort and significance of this whole activity only when you accept that this world is worth looking at. And within Plato's framework, where this world is merely a copy, you will not have mental disposition to look at these details. So that is a remarkable departure, Aristotle made from Plato, and that is a important foundation for subsequent philosophizing. A matter of learning how to harness various cognitive powers in the soul and to develop them into a state of excellent functioning is something that is human beings are endowed with. But most important aspect of Aristotle is that he highlights, he privileges contemplative life. Though he is a person who gave importance to body, senses, and material aspects, he is also a person who says that more than the empirical life, what is important, the ultimate purpose of human existence lies not in accessing senses, not in having habits, but in a contemplative life. That's where I think he goes closer to his master, Plato. But then he doesn't go there right from the beginning. He arrives at that after accessing the empirical world and attending to great and foundational details, distinctions, and classifications. So you find that distinction is very, very important. So to summarize, I want to bring it to your notice that there is a remarkable change initiated by Aristotle, and you will understand the radicalness of this change when you compare Aristotle with his teacher Plato. That's one axis that will make this lesson look better, and you will be able to understand it better. The other one is that after deviating after coming away from his teacher's idealism, he gets into a massive task of attending to the various facets, various distinctions, and various classifications of the empirical reality. And this is a contribution which is reaping even today in the discipline of philosophy and outside the discipline of philosophy. Thank you.